Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and today we're going to take a look at two new luxury beauty releases. We have the new Valentino Color Flip eyeshadow palette called When in Paris. And you can see you actually have 8 shades here, so we'll take a look at that. We're also going to be looking at the new, that's the wrong thing, the Dior Rouge Forever liquid lipsticks. So there are 8 shades in this. I picked up 3 of them, so we're going to talk about those. And I've been wearing them for a while, so I do have some extended thoughts. None of these items are a first impressions. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off by swatching the palette, but first let me show you the packaging. Personally, I don't love Valentino's packaging in general for any of their products, but their formulas are incredible. You know, I really do love the Valentino products themselves. So, you know, sticking with the theme of the rest of their packaging. And by the way, this is my first time using Valentino eyeshadow. There is an original palette that I do not have, but we've got, you know, this is plastic. So we've got the red plastic with the gold fingerprint magnet on here. We have 2 sets of 4 eyeshadows, and they do have varying weights depending on the finish. So we have 4 that are 2 grams and 4 that are 2.4 grams. So when you open that up, we have a mirror here, and it does have the little plastic to pull off. And then we have 2 applicators that go right down here. And you can see that we actually have this plastic tray that can come out to hold the applicators as well. So you can keep that if you want, but you don't need to. Now for our applicators, they are single-sided. They're both brushes. You can see we have a shader style and an angled liner brush. Now, as for the actual eyeshadows, we have, again, plastic, but we have 4 eyeshadows here, so you could essentially use this as a quad or you can mix and match. But they are arranged as quads with, you know, different finishes and, you know, everything you would need for one particular look. So let's go ahead and swatch these. We're going to start with the front palette and we'll do the top 2, bottom 2. Now, we have kind of this soft matte. You can see that it barely shows up on my skin. And then we have this pink. You can see here in the pan versus on my skin. The pan, it looks a lot cooler. And on my skin, you can really see a lot more warmth. Now, I do have a neutral undertone on my skin, So, you know, things show up pretty true to color. So you're really seeing that we do have warmer undertones in this rose. It's really more of a peachy rose. This lighter beige shade here also has a touch of golden beige to it. There's a little bit of yellow in there. So just something to note. Now, these are both mattes. Their matte formula is it's very smooth, easy to use. Next up, this one here, you can see, you know, the way some of the promo photos look, this looks like a gray and a black. You can sort of see that looking here. But if you look at them up close in person, you can see that these are actually different colors. However, I still think that they swatch differently than what they look like. For example, when I had it on my hand, you could see like some plum and some gray, but look how much lighter this is. Let me put this here again. So you can see, you know, it does swatch more, a little bit more differently. Now, this particular shade feels a little gritty to the touch. You know, there are some glitter particles in it, but as soon as you start smoothing that out, they sort of melt away. So this is kind of what I was expecting the new Chanel loose powder eyeshadow to be like in texture. You've got a little bit of grittiness when you touch it, but it smooths away during application. And yeah, so we have this shade here, which actually has a bit of brown. It has some plum. It's like a warm tone plum. And then there's tiny bits of golden glitter. Now this shade here, that in many photos, it looks black. It's actually a really deep plum eggplant shade. And this is a creamy matte. It's really a little bit more of a satin matte because you can see a touch of sheen to it. And this is going to be slightly creamier in texture than the 2 lighter shades. But you can see it's definitely going to be a deep plum, but there is a touch of red in there. So it's going to be a warmer tone plum. Now let's take a look at the next 4 and just We're going to start off with a glitter shade here. This is just a golden glitter. Okay, so again, just like this formula here. So it feels a little gritty. We've got some glitter in here. This one is going to be more sparkly. So although these two both have the same type of glitter formula, they can feel a little gritty, you smooth it out, and then it feels smooth. There's a lot less glitter in this shade compared to this. This is definitely going to be more of it's more of a bronze gold glitter. And then we have another matte shade here. It's nice and smooth, you know, one of those silky, creamy ones. You can see that this is going to be more of a soft clay shade. So we have a little bit of like a rusty clay tone to this mixed with a beige. Next, we have a metallic shimmer shade. I mean, look at this. It's a red metallic. When you pile it up, you can really get, you know, a nice ruby red. There are going to be, you know, some hints of orange in there. So when you buff that out, you can really see there's more orange to that. So it's going to be kind of an orangey red. But if you layer it on, you can get, you know, more red than orange. So I wouldn't say ruby. It doesn't have any blue tones to it. It's definitely going to be a warm red. And then last up, we have a matte brown. And this is going to be a nice neutral brown. There is, again, just a little hint of red in this brown, but for the most part, it's pretty neutral. And yeah, you know, these would be our 8 shades in the When in Paris palette. So we'll talk about this. Let's go ahead and do that now. We'll take a look at some eye swatches and some demos using these shades while we talk about these formulas. Now, before we get into too many details about the actual product, I want to mention the box. So the palette comes encased in kind of like a foam sheet inside the box. So you can see it is, you know, a bit of a hefty size in comparison. So it is pretty secure. But what I wanted to bring your attention to is the flap on here. So if you take a look inside your packaging, there is going to be a unique discount code on here. So if you go and make a purchase on Valentino Beauty, you can get some sort of reward with this code. So just something to note. And there is, you know, again, it's going to be a unique code to the item. So moving on to the rest of the box here, if you are reading the box, it says flip the rules and free your creativity by mixing and matching 8 eyeshadows. So they're first recommending prepping your eyelids with one of the shadows, then apply and blend up to 4 colors and top off your look with a touch of dazzling shimmers. So we have, as I mentioned, 4 shades that are 2 grams each and 4 that are 2.4 grams each. These are made in Italy, so we have a total weight of 17.6 grams. And I have to say, I think it's kind of nice to have the 2 palettes in one. You know, if you travel a lot, this is definitely, you know, very handy for that. I do wish that you could kind of remove these pans and switch them around, kind of reorganize them, but that is not something that you can do with this palette. So these pans are not removable. I like the way that you have the flip function on these. And let's talk a little bit about these formulas here. So the matte shades, I have to say, you know, they are they feel silky but slightly creamy. They're really just a very smooth matte. I think that they work really well together. They perform nicely and they're just really easy to use. I have to say I do really like the matte shade here. Now, as for the formula of these shadows, I think that they all perform very nicely. The mattes and the satin mattes, you know, the satins, all of those, they all perform very nicely. They are smooth and silky to the touch. Your satins have a touch more cream to it. But they all go on very smoothly. They blend out nicely. You can really soften the shades by buffing them out a little bit, or you can really deepen them, layering them on. Of course, finger application will give you a slightly more pigmented look, but I would have to say that the shades are very pigmented in general, aside from obviously the ones that are intended to be much lighter, such as those 2 latest shades in the front palette there. So, overall, I think those formulas are really nice. They perform very nicely. They're easy to use and they are long wearing. The glittery shades here, the bottom left-hand corner of the first palette and the top left-hand corner of the second palette. Those, again, they have a bit of a gritty texture to them. They are definitely going to be more of a glitter shade. The golden shade has a lot more glitter and a little bit more grit to it than the shade in the first quad. And again, the actual base of that, I wouldn't say it's a transparent base, but it is a translucent bronze base with the golden shimmer. Whereas the one in the first palette, we have more of a bronzed plum base. Again, it's going to be translucent when you blend that out. But the shimmer, Valentino is saying it's silver shimmer, but I think when it mixes with the other shades in the base there, it really tends to take more of a warmer hue. I can see little flakes of silver mixed in there, but I also see a little tiny bit of silver mixed into the gold. I still feel like I see more golden hue glitter to it than silver. So although I think it is a cooler shade than that in the second palette, it still has a warm slant to it because of the more reddish base here, the warmer bronze tones there. So the first palette, I think, is intended to be your cooler version and the other one slightly warmer, but I would say that they both lean warm overall, but the first one is going to be a little closer to neutral on the spectrum versus the second quad. Now, as for the glitters, as I mentioned, when you smooth those out, they do kind of, blend out a bit and you don't feel that grittiness when you smooth that out. So it sort of melts in a little bit. So if you want to layer that on, that's not going to happen. But if you're swiping that on, you're using a finger, it can kind of melt a little bit and you get this smoother texture to it. So I just thought that was something important to mention. Now, as for the metallic red shade, that is a really nice formula. It's very smooth. It's got some creaminess to it, but it definitely doesn't feel like moist in any way. You can tell it's definitely a powder, but it's just very, very finely milled. You don't have any chunks of glitter. It's a really beautiful metallic that if you want to keep blending out, it will end up having more of a satin finish. And I just think it's a really beautiful formula. Personally, the red shade is not the best shade for me on the eyes, but I do really love this formula and I can see this being a nice accent color. Right off the bat, this second quad here actually made me think of one of the recent Dior palettes. So we'll take a look at that from, I believe, was that holiday last year? So we'll take a look at that as well in just a minute with some comparisons. But as you're looking at the eye demos and the swatches, you can see that they go on smoothly. Everything blends out. Performance is great on these. And I would have to say it's a really nice product. The big deciding factor is, are you interested in these shades? And, I think that is one of the it's a great idea to have the 8 shades in these palettes, but what if you only like 4? I feel like that's really not, I wish that there were options to rearrange things, possibly refill and so forth, so you could kind of create your own selection if there were a shade or two that perhaps you felt like you weren't really going to use. But maybe that will happen in the future. As of this moment, it's not refillable. So let's go ahead and move on to some comparisons and then we'll take a look at the Dior lipsticks. Now, the first thing I want to take a look at is this palette from Dior. This is the Reflexion palette. It's number 889, and I think this was holiday last year, but we do have kind of a similar orange and red and so forth color story. So I'm gonna do this one vertically, and you can see that this red is going to be a bit cooler than that in the Valentino. The Valentino is going to be a little bit softer, has a little bit more orange. This shade here is going to be more of a burnt copper. And our base shade here is similar to the base in the glitter shade. This is going to have a little bit, it's not as translucent, and it's also a little bit more yellow. So our bottom two shades here in the Dior palette, we have more of a rosy shade and a deeper brown. Again, just a similar color story, although the shades themselves are not dupes. So this is Dior Reflexion, in case you have that one. I also wanted to take a look at a couple of the Chanel Tweed quads. This one here is number 2, Tweed Porpora. And let's go ahead and take a look at that right up here. And these shades are not, again, going to be dupes for these, but they did kind of make me think a little bit of the first half of the Valentino. You can see that these shades are going to be a bit more rosy. They're also a little bit cooler in tone. They're still kind of a neutral warm rosy kind of palette there, but you can see that we do have a little bit of similarity here with this shade and this one. And this, you know, they give you kind of a similar vibe. So although they aren't dupes, again, we do have a vaguely similar color story. This is the Tweed Brunet Rose, number 4. And this is going to be pretty different, but I just wanted to kind of put this one here just so we can see that. Just wanted to kind of compare that color story as well. We don't really have that plum vibe, but the kind of peachy shade in here did kind of make me think of this base shade here, the first shade in the palette. And then next up, I wanted to take a look at some Tom Ford quads. This is Virgin Orchid, and I'm just going to swatch this down at the bottom. I really wanted to take a look at more of these like purpley shades. We're going to go all the way down here, but this is going to be a much cooler tone palette than the first one here. This is one of the creme palettes. This is Smoky Quartz. And let's see how this one compares to this one down here. We're going to put this right here. And these are going to be kind of some like rusty tones. You have some of those rusty earth tones, but really they're going to be pretty different from the Valentino. What kind of makes me think of it though would be these shades with the deeper brown. But again, we don't have that red in there, which is really what makes that one kind of stand out. However, if you don't care about the red, it is kind of a similar color story otherwise. And then this one is Tom Ford Body Heat. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And again, this is going to be a bit more, you know, earthy than the Valentino. The Valentino's got a little bit more vibrance because of that red. And you can see we've got a lot more brown in Body Heat. We do have kind of this like rusty coppery shade here, but it's not going to be similar to any of those in the Valentino. And then last up, I wanted to take a look at Honeymoon from Tom Ford. Let's squeeze this in right here. And there we go. So actually these browns are kind of similar here, but the Tom Ford's can be a little bit cooler. It's more of a mix of these two, but a little bit deeper. This shade definitely has a bit more pink to it than any of the shades in the Valentino. So yeah, you know, you can kind of pick and choose similar shades from different palettes, but don't have anything quite with this collection of colors. So my overall thoughts on the Valentino palette, I think it's a really nice palette. I like the formulas a lot, but I was hoping that it was going to be a little bit cooler in tone than it actually is in person. The fact that some of the colors look a little bit different in the pan before swatching kind of threw me off at first, but after seeing them, you know, it's very easy to work with. Overall, I'd have to say it's a nice palette. So let me know what you think about it. Let's move on to the Dior liquid lipsticks. So the Dior liquid lipsticks, where I have 8 different shades, you do need to shake these first. And I'm just gonna pop a little clip up here right now of what it looks like if you open it without shaking. You can see there's definitely gonna be oil separation in there. It looks like the pigment really isn't in there. There's like a little bit of a greenish cast there. So you definitely wanna shake it. Dior recommends shaking it for 3 seconds. So I picked up 3 of the shades. Let's take a look here at the applicator as well. And you can see that we have one side here, which has, it's almost like a little pool of liquid here. This is where you're really going to want to apply it with. And then the other side, so we've got a concave side. This convex, you can see it also kind of bows out a little bit. And that's going to really help with lining. So we're going to go ahead and put these here. This shade here is number 100 Nude Look. Now, if you're familiar with the classic shade Nude Look from Dior, typically we see something more of a nude peach. It's a lot lighter. This is definitely going to be a lot deeper than other Nude Look shades that I have. Next up, we have 720 Icon. And this is another classic shade from Dior. And again, I think this one, I don't know if I still have it, but I might still have the Dior Icon lipstick. And if I recall correctly, it was deeper than this. So we're going to take a look at that. And then the other shade I picked up is 459 Flower. And I have to say, this, I thought it was going to be a bit deeper, more vibrant than it is. It's really more of it's a coral shade, but it's a bit milkier of a coral than I expected. So let's take a look at the lip swatches and talk a little bit about this product before we move on to comparisons. The Rouge Dior Forever Liquid Lacquers retail for $45 US. They come in 8 shades and they are made in Italy. We have 6 milliliters of product. Now, according to Dior, these are a transfer-proof liquid shine lipstick. They have ultra pigmented color and a lacquer-like shine without compromising comfort. It mentions shaking the tube, and I apologize, I said 3 seconds. It's actually 5 seconds to blend the biphase formula, and it's supposed to last 12 hours. There's an ultra-fine texture with a barely there feel on the lips. It's hydrated and makes your lips look plump for 12 hours. So overall, I have to say, I think this is a really great formula. If you're familiar with the Chanel Ultra Tenue Duos, those we have that similar type of biphase formula, but it's in 2 different components. So you put on first the matte pigment and you kind of put that on your lips and they start feeling like tacky and a little kind of glued in place. And then you add the clear gloss on top to get that shiny effect. This is essentially that same type of idea, but it's all in one. So you don't get that tacky texture to your lips. It doesn't feel stiff. When you do put this on, it is a very thin liquid. When I first opened it, I was thinking it'd be a little bit thicker in texture, but it is very thin. It's a runny texture. So you do want to make sure that you utilize the applicator appropriately because, it's really easy to kind of overdo that and, end up with too much product on your lips. So when you first apply it, if you have chapped lips at all, you will feel a little bit of a sting. It does have the same thing with the Chanel for me. You will feel, it's not a tingling like a peppermint thing. There is a little bit of that burning, stinging sensation and, feels very much like the Chanel, except it already has the gloss in it so that, you don't get that kind of tacky glue-like texture on your lips. It is going to kind of dry fairly quickly. And then as it's drying, you end up with more of an emollient texture, like a lip gloss. But when you first put it on, it feels more like an actual liquid. It evaporates quickly, and then you feel more of that emollient texture of the gloss. So just something to note there. This is sufficient with 1 to 2 layers of product. If you are going to add a second layer, I would recommend waiting 5 to 10 seconds in between applications just to let that first layer truly kind of set, and then go in and fill in wherever you would like to see extra product. But I have to say, I think this is a fantastic product. It really does last all day. There, just kiss my hand. You can see what you get for transfer. You're not actually transferring any pigment, but just like the Chanel Ultra Tenue Duos, if you are going to see just a little bit of, can you see the clear like gloss that transferred? So you will get a little transfer of that. Your lips still remain pretty shiny throughout the day, but that super high shine finish that you get, that does kind of remove a little bit with transfer. It has never gotten to the point though where it actually looks like a matte lipstick on my lips. So just something to note there. Overall, I think it's very comfortable. You get a little bit of that stinging sensation at first, it evaporates, then you're left with kind of that glossy feel if you rub your lips together, but it's weightless on the lips. It definitely doesn't feel heavy, and you kind of forget that it's there throughout the day. But if you are, let's say now I've had mine on for about an hour. If I rub my lips together, I have a little bit, it almost feels like a thin lip balm on my lips. That's kind of what I'm feeling, just a little bit of product there, but I can't really, it's very thin, very lightweight. It's not super oily feeling. It's not super waxy. It's kind of in between there. So let's take a look at a few comparisons here. Okay, so let's start off with Dior. And we're going to start off with the Rouge Dior Forever Nude Look. So this is number 100 in the Forever formula. So this is Nude Look here, and you can see the difference here. It's going to be a lighter. It's actually a little bit rosier in the Forever formula, and yeah, just slightly different. I also have it in the matte formula in the Rouge Dior lipsticks, and you can see this is going to be a little bit peachier and a little bit more brown. So I just feel like those are all very different from each other. Now, a few more Dior lipsticks. These are the Addict Lip Tints, and I wanted to compare these with Flower. So this one here is 451 Natural Coral, and let's go ahead and put this right here. You can see this is going to be a bit more orangey, but it's close. I feel like that's fairly close. Now this is going to be a lot lighter of a look, more translucent. It's water-based, not going to be, as long wearing. This shade here is going to be 561 Natural Poppy. This has more of an orangey red to it. And again, these are going to give you more of that like water stain look. And then last up we have 251 Natural Peach. And there we go. So again, they go on lighter, so I'm trying to make sure you can see the color piled up, but this is going to be definitely more of a peach shade versus the coral. I think out of these, the closest is that first one, 451 Natural Coral, but it is going to be more pink than what we have in 459 Flower. Now, a few other shades I want to look at. This is one of the Chanel Rouge Allure Locks. This is 63 Ultimate. And I wanted to see how this compares. I unfortunately don't have Icon. I just shook this, but I guess here, let me pile up the color. You can see this is going to be more of a rosy shade. Let's put it right here next to Nude Look down here. So these are nice shiny locks. I like them. I don't really love them. I think that better ones have come out since these debuted, but they are going to be a thin liquid and they are not as long wearing as your Ultra Tenue Duos. So we're going to take a look at that in just a second. But first, this is Cle de Peau's. This is the Rouge Creme Brillant in 204 Maraca Ginger. I just wanted to kind of swatch this one down here, so you can see how this compares. I thought this might be kind of close to Icon, but I would say there's definitely going to be more red in the Maraca Ginger. It's got a warmer rose hue to it than Icon, which definitely has more of a browner rose hue. Now, these are the Chanel Ultra Tenue Duos. I don't have a lot of these because I like them. They were great for wearing masks all the time, but they're not a favorite because I don't really like that stiff lip feel. So I actually prefer these Dior ones. But let's go ahead and take a look at these. We have 174 Endless Pink. So what you would do with these is you would use this, apply the color to your lips, and then after that sets and it kind of gets a little stiff and sticky, then you go in with the other side and you have like a clear gloss, and you can see this is going to be more of a paintbrush style applicator, and you just put that on. You can touch up with the gloss throughout the day as well if you'd like. Now this Endless Pink, it is going to be a peachy pink. It doesn't really go with any of these here. So this other one here, 172 Light Mauve, this is my favorite of the ones that I have. But again, this isn't really going to go with any of them either. It is going to be a softer, cooler tone pink and a really pretty shade. So I like that one. That's the one that I wear the most. And then we have 112 Chic Rosewood. And I'm going to put this one up here, kind of in between Nude Look and Icon, just so you can kind of see. Again, this is going to be more of a rosewood, so it's also going to be a little bit cooler. We have more rose mixed with brown, a little bit of plum in there. Really pretty shade. The depth of color is going to be comparable to the Icon and the Nude Look here. So those are my comparisons for these. Overall, I'd have to say the new Dior Rouge Forever liquid lipsticks are really nice. I really like those. Their color line runs pretty dark. They don't really, the Nude Look is the lightest shade, and it's not really light on the lips. So I do wish that they would have some lighter shades. That might be a little bit challenging with the formula, but I think it's a great formula. For me, I prefer them over the Chanel simply because you don't have that like stiff glue-like texture before you put on the lip gloss, but performance is going to be pretty comparable between the two of them. I think they are both really nice products. And yeah, again, you're going to have a little bit of that stinging sensation with application for both of those. Overall, I think it's a great product, and I wouldn't hesitate to purchase more of these. I like having them remain a bit glossy. The only other product that really came to mind that I have that's similar would be these Lip Maestro satin versions from Armani. I don't have any similar shades, but this here is shade number 1. And again, this is going to stay glossy on the lips. This is a long wearing glossy lip lacquer. However, it's probably not quite as long wearing as the Dior or the Chanel. You also I don't get that stinging sensation with these. This goes on more like a liquid lipstick. It stays glossy. They do have a great shade range. So it kind of depends what you're looking for. These are definitely still long wearing, but not quite as transfer proof as the Dior and the Chanel. So just something to note there. My personal preference between those three brands though is the Armani personally. I love their color range. So that's the main thing there, the color range. And I do find them a little bit more comfortable during application, followed by the Dior and then the Chanel. So I hope this was helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know if you've tried any of these. I'd love to know if you've tried the original Valentino palette, what you think of the color stories and the formula and so forth. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you very soon. Have a great day.